It was raining heavily that evening, the kind of rain that makes the world blur into streaks of gray and silver. Lila had just finished a long shift at the hospital and was eager to get home, her mind exhausted from the constant demands of saving lives and comforting families. As she walked to her car, parked at the far end of the lot, she noticed a young man standing. He wasn't just wet, he was trembling, not from the cold alone, but from a deeper, unspoken pain. Without thinking, Lila unlocked her car and called out softly, "Hey, do you want to get out of the rain?" The man hesitated, eyes wide with a mix of relief and embarrassment, then nodded and hurried toward her car. He got in silently, shaking off water and pulling the seatbelt over his shoulder. Lila tried to offer a warm smile, but her curiosity gnawed at her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" she asked gently, trying not to pry but unable to ignore the obvious distress radiating from him. The man's hands clenched the steering wheel, though he wasn't driving. I just needed a place to sit," he muttered, his voice breaking slightly. Lila sensed that there was more to the story than he was willing to share immediately. She started the car and turned on the heater, the warm air filling the small space, but the atmosphere remained tense. The rhythmic patter of rain on the roof was the only sound for a few moments, and then the man's shoulders shook, his hands covering his face as he began to cry, quietly. Lila's heart ached at the sight. She had seen suffering in the hospital every day, but there was something raw and vulnerably about this stranger that made her want to reach out, to offer more than just shelter from the storm. She placed a tentative hand on his arm. "It's okay to cry. You're safe here," she said softly, trying to convey that he wasn't alone in this moment. The man's shoulders jerked again, and he wiped at his eyes, embarrassed by the tears that had suddenly escaped. I don't know what to do," he whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of grief and fear. Lila nodded, keeping her tone calm, wanting him to feel in control despite his visible distress. "Sometimes we just need to let it out. You don't have to explain if you don't want to, but I can listen if that helps." He stared at her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to trust a complete stranger, and then slowly began to speak. His story came in broken sentences at first, a jumble of emotion and shame. He told her about losing his job, about the fight with his family that left him homeless for the night, and about the crushing weight of feeling like he had nowhere to turn. Lila listened intently, not interrupting, letting the words flow and the tears fall. She realized that sometimes the smallest act of offering a seat in a warm car, giving someone a moment of human connection, could mean the difference between despair and hope. As the rain continued to fall outside, the man's sobs gradually quieted, replaced by shaky breaths. He looked at her, gratitude mingling with lingering sadness in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, but Lila could see the weight of those two words carried a world of meaning. She offered him a bottle of water from her glove compartment and a few tissues, the kind of small gestures that spoke louder than any grand gesture ever could. "Do you want to stay here until the rain lets up?" she asked. He nodded again, this time with a faint, genuine smile beginning to break through the tears. In that moment, Lila felt a surge of warmth that had nothing to do with the heater in her car. Sometimes, kindness wasn't about solving someone's entire problem. It was about showing up, offering a safe space, and letting them know that for a few minutes, someone saw their pain and cared. She realized that this encounter, brief as it was, could be a turning point for someone teetering on the edge. Her mind wandered briefly, imagining the stories she could share with her viewers on Kindness Tallies Live, how this small, human connection could remind millions that even a simple act, letting a stranger sit in your car, could ripple out into something far bigger than anyone might expect. Lila's heart felt heavy yet hopeful, a reminder that in the middle of life's storms, literal and metaphorical, compassion could be the lifeline someone desperately needed. She glanced at the man again, who had finally stopped crying and was taking slow, steady breaths. She knew she had made the right choice, and yet curiosity lingered. What had driven him to such heartbreak? And what would he do next, now that someone had shown him a moment of humanity in a world that often felt indifferent? For now, she would let him rest, let the rain wash the night clean, and simply be there, because sometimes just being there was enough. ***. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, streaks of water sliding down the car windows as if the sky itself was crying softly along with the young man. Lila glanced at him again, noticing how different he seemed now, less frantic, less raw, but still fragile, like a wounded bird unsure if it could ever take flight again. She wanted to give him space, but the silence felt heavy, almost suffocating. So she decided to start a gentle conversation, one that might ease him into trust without pressing too hard. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, voice low and steady. He shook his head slightly, avoiding her gaze, and Lila respected that, sensing the importance of letting him set the pace. Instead, she decided to offer something less intrusive, a small distraction from his turmoil. "I always keep a few snacks in the car," she said, reaching into her glove compartment to pull out a granola bar and a small bottle of juice. "Sometimes a little food can help settle your mind, even if just a bit." The man hesitated, then took them with trembling hands, his fingers brushing hers in a fleeting moment of human connection. He unwrapped the granola bar and nibbled, slowly, the act somehow grounding him in the present, away from the whirlwind of anxiety and grief that had been consuming him. Lila watched him with a mixture of concern and empathy, realizing that this stranger, whom she had never met before, tonight was a mosaic of experiences, pain, and resilience that the world had yet to recognize. She couldn't help but feel protective, as if letting him sit in her car had created an unspoken bond, a tiny lifeline thrown across the chaos of his night. "It's okay," she murmured after a while. "You don't have to explain everything, all at once. Sometimes, taking a breath is enough." The young man's eyes flicked to hers, gratitude mingling with lingering shame, and he nodded slowly, as if trying to internalize the permission she had given him to simply exist without judgment. Lila thought about her own life, about the countless patients she had seen who carried invisible burdens, and she realized that vulnerability was universal. It could arrive suddenly, uninvited, and demand acknowledgement. She wanted to create a safe space for him, just as she did for everyone else she encountered in her work. "Do you want to tell me your name?" she asked softly. The man hesitated again, a flicker of fear crossing his face. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan," he said. Lila nodded, committing the name to memory, a quiet affirmation that he existed, that he mattered. "It's nice to meet you, Ethan," she replied. "I'm Lila." For a few moments they sat in silence, punctuated only by the soft ticking of the windshield wipers. The rain had slowed to a mere drizzle, leaving the world outside glistening and reflective, almost surreal in its quiet beauty. Ethan's hands rested on his lap now, less tense, though the tremor in his fingers betrayed lingering fear. I lost my apartment today," he said finally, voice cracking slightly, "and I haven't eaten properly in 2 days. I don't know where to go." Lila's heart ached, the weight of his words settling deep within her chest. She had encountered loss and desperation in many forms, but hearing it firsthand, from someone sitting next to her, a complete stranger, made it painfully real. "You're not alone," she said firmly, the conviction in her voice surprising even herself. "Tonight, at least, you're not alone. You can stay here until you feel ready to face the world again." Ethan looked at her, eyes wide, and for the first time, a flicker of hope crossed his face, faint but unmistakable. Lila realized that kindness wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about showing up, being present, and offering tangible comfort when someone was on the edge of despair. She thought about how often she had underestimated the power of such small acts. How a seat in a warm car, a granola bar, a bottle of water, could be a turning point in someone's life. She also thought about her viewers on Kindness Dailies, live, imagining the impact this story could have, how it could inspire millions to act with empathy and courage in moments that seemed insignificant but were actually like, "You're stronger than you think, Ethan," she said softly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "And you don't have to face everything alone. Sometimes, just one person showing up makes all the difference." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard, the raw emotion in his eyes slowly giving way to something steadier, a fragile but growing resilience. The rain outside continued its gentle pattern, a soothing backdrop to a night that had begun in despair but was now quietly shifting toward hope. In that car, in the small cocoon of warmth and safety, a connection had formed a bond that neither of them could have anticipated, yet both felt profoundly. Lila knew that this was only the beginning, that Ethan's journey would still be difficult, but she also knew that tonight he had been seen, heard, and cared for in a way that could change everything. As the drizzle softened outside, Lila decided it was time to gently shift the focus from past hardships to the immediate present. She wanted Ethan to feel a sense of stability, even if fleeting, a reminder that the world could offer small anchors when everything else seemed to be falling apart. Ethan, she said softly, sometimes we can't change everything at once, but we can take the next right step. Even something tiny counts. He looked at her, eyes cautious, yet there was a hint of curiosity and openness to believe that someone might genuinely care without judgment. She offered him a smile and continued, let's figure out tonight first. Where can you go? Is there a friend or a place you feel safe? Ethan shook his head, a shadow of frustration crossing his face. No one. I have no one right now. That's why I just wandered and ended up here, he admitted. Lila's heart ached again, but she didn't show panic or pity. She kept her voice calm, steady, a lighthouse in the storm of his emotions. Okay, she said, then tonight Askar is your safe place. We'll stay here until you feel ready to move. You're not alone in this moment. Ethan nodded, slowly, the corners of his mouth twitching in a fragile attempt at a smile. Lila's own heart swelled, a mixture of empathy and determination. She knew that many people might drive past, ignore, or judge someone in his state. But tonight she had chosen to see him, not the situation, not the embarrassment, but the person. Underneath, wounded and human, silence settled for a few minutes, filled only with the soft hum of the heater and the occasional splash of rain on the windshield. Then, as if testing the waters, Ethan spoke again, quieter this time, voice trembling. I feel like I've failed. Everywhere I go, it's like I'm breaking something, or leaving behind people who expect more from me. Lila nodded. Slowly, it's okay to feel that way. Everyone feels lost sometimes, but feeling lost doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. It means you're still trying, still moving, still alive, and that's the part that matters most. Ethan's eyes glistened with tears again, though this time they were softer, calmer, as if her words were a gentle balm on a raw wound. Do you really think so? He asked quietly. Lila placed her hand over his, a small gesture of reassurance. I know so, and tonight, you don't have to carry the weight alone. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in hours, his shoulders relaxed slightly. Lila could see the transformation beginning, subtle but significant. Kindness, she realized, wasn't about grand gestures or solving someone's entire life. It was about presence, about witnessing pain and saying without words, you are not alone. She thought about how this moment could inspire her viewers on Kindness Tally's live, showing them that reaching out, even in small ways, could ripple through someone's life in profound ways. Do you want to share what's making it so hard? She asked gently, giving him an opening without forcing him. Ethan hesitated, then spoke in a rush, words tumbling out in fragments of fear, shame, and sorrow. He described losing his apartment, feeling disconnected from family, and the overwhelming sense of invisibility that came from being adrift in the world. Lila listened carefully, nodding and occasionally offering soft words of comfort, never interrupting, never judging. She realized that sometimes listening was more powerful than any advice she could offer. As his voice quieted, he looked at her with something like relief in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know why you're helping me. I barely even know you. Lila smiled softly. Maybe that's exactly why, sometimes. The world needs someone to care, even if it's just for a moment. That moment can change everything. The rain outside had slowed to a light mist, the streets shimmering under the dim glow of street lights. Inside the car, a small bubble of warmth and security had formed, fragile but real. Ethan shifted slightly, taking another deep breath, and Lila felt a spark of hope for him. You're stronger than you think, she added. And even tonight, you've already shown it by just being here, by letting yourself accept help. For the first time, Ethan allowed a genuine smile to touch his face, tentative but real. Lila's heart lifted. She knew this was a turning point. Even though the challenges ahead were immense, tonight had given him something vital, human connection, compassion, and the knowledge that someone saw him, truly saw him, and cared. And in that quiet, rainy night, in the glow of the car's interior, she thought about how many people could be transformed by a simple act of kindness. Stories like these, she knew, were why she shared them on Kindness Tally's Live too. Remind the world that no matter how small the gesture, it could have the power to heal, to inspire, and to give someone hope when they needed it most. The rain had nearly stopped, leaving behind a faint mist and the smell of wet asphalt that always seemed to carry a sense of calm after a storm. Lila watched Ethan quietly, noticing how he was beginning to settle, the tension in his body slowly fading. She knew that tonight would not erase all his problems, but seeing him take a small step toward feeling safe felt like a victory in itself. Ethan, she said softly, breaking the silence. Sometimes when life feels overwhelming, it helps to focus on one thing at a time. What's one small step you can take tonight that won't feel impossible? Ethan thought for a moment, fingers fidgeting nervously. I guess I could try calling a shelter, just to see if there's a place for me tonight, he said, quietly, almost unsure if he had the courage to follow through. Lila nodded encouragingly. That's a good start. You don't have to do everything at once. One step is enough. You're already being brave by even considering it. Ethan gave a small, almost shy nod, and Lila could see that her words were beginning to sink in. She reached over and handed him her phone, fully charged and with a note of warmth. Here, you can use this. I'll stay right here while you call, if that helps. He hesitated for a moment, then took it, fingers trembling slightly as he dialed the number for a local shelter. Lila stayed silent, offering quiet support, and watched as his voice shook on the other end. The conversation was brief but seemed to lift a weight from his shoulders, and when he hung up, a tiny smile appeared. They've said there's a bed for tonight, he whispered, relief evident in his tone. Lila felt a swell of happiness for him. Knowing that such a simple outcome, a safe place to sleep, could feel like a miracle when hope had seemed so distant. See, she said gently, one small step can lead to something big. Tonight, you took that step. Ethan's eyes met hers, gratitude shining in their depths. He opened his mouth, likely to say something more, but no words came. Instead, he let the silence carry the unspoken thanks. Lila realized that sometimes words weren't necessary. Presence itself could heal, even if only a little, and that quiet reassurance mattered more than anything she could say. The mist outside gave the streets an ethereal quality, the city lights reflecting softly on puddles and wet asphalt. Inside the car, a small bubble of warmth had formed, shielding them from the chill of the early night and the emotional storm that had preceded it. Ethan leaned back, taking a deep breath, and for the first time, there was a hint of peace on his face. Lila allowed herself a small smile, feeling that tonight, even in the midst of despair, something profoundly human had occurred. She thought about her viewers on Kindness Tally's Live and how this story could inspire them to notice the people around them who might need just a little help, a small act of compassion that could change a life. You know, Ethan, she said softly, sometimes the world feels heavy, but there are moments like this, small pockets of light, that remind us that kindness exists, and tonight, you experienced one of those moments. He nodded, eyes glistening, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and lingering sadness, all mingling together. I never expected anyone to stop for me, he admitted quietly. Lila shook her head gently, and that's exactly why you should remember this moment. Sometimes, the right person shows up at the right time, and it can make all the difference. For the next few minutes, they sat quietly, the kind of comfortable silence that comes from shared understanding. Ethan's breathing had steadied, and Lila could see a faint glimmer of hope flickering within him. She knew the journey ahead would still be difficult tomorrow, might bring uncertainty and challenges, but tonight had given him a lifeline, a reminder that someone cared, that he mattered. As the car engine idled softly, she thought about how many people might pass by someone in Ethan's position without noticing, without offering a small act of kindness. And she knew that by sharing stories like this on Kindness Tally's Live, she could encourage others to see, to act, and to give hope where it was desperately needed. The rain had stopped entirely now, leaving a calm, reflective night behind. And in that quiet moment, Lila realized that something profound had happened. Two strangers had connected. Two hearts had met in a moment of vulnerability, and kindness had bridged the gap. Tonight, she thought, was proof that even in the darkest moments, light could find a way through. And sometimes all it took was a seat in a warm car, a listening ear, and a willingness to care. By the time the night had fully settled, the streets were quiet, shrouded in a soft mist that reflected the dim glow of the city light. Lila watched Ethan, noticing how much calmer he seemed compared to when she first spotted him under that tree, shivering and broken. The fear in his eyes had softened, replaced with a fragile but tangible sense of hope, a spark that had been missing for hours. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from heroism or praise, but from knowing that her simple decision to let a stranger sit in her car had made a real difference. Ethan, she said softly, breaking the silence, you've already taken the first step towards something better. One night at a shelter doesn't solve everything, but it's a start, and it matters. Ethan nodded, his voice trembling slightly but carrying a hint of strength he hadn't had before. I don't know how to thank you, he admitted. Lila shook her head, a small smile on her lips. You don't need to thank me. Just promise yourself that you'll hold on, even when it's hard. Tonight, if someone cared, tomorrow you can start to care for yourself too. They sat together for a few more minutes, the silence filled with quiet understanding and a mutual recognition of the night's significance. Lila could see that Ethan was beginning to believe that kindness still existed in the world, that even in moments of despair, there were people willing to stop, notice, and act. She thought about the countless viewers of Kindness Daily's Live who would hear this story, who might be inspired to extend the same grace and compassion to others. The ripple effect of a small act of empathy could travel far beyond what anyone could imagine, and she knew that tonight was a testament to that truth. I'll be okay tonight, Ethan said finally, voice steadier, a small but genuine smile forming. Thanks to you, Lila, for just being here, she nodded, her heart warmed by the simple sincerity of his words. We'll be okay. And when you're ready, the world will still be here for you, one step at a time. Ethan glanced at her once more, eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and quiet determination. Lila could sense that this night, this unexpected encounter, had become a turning point, a moment he would carry with him, even as he faced the challenges ahead. As he prepared to leave for the shelter, she handed him a small pack of essentials she had kept in her car snacks, a bottle of water, and a warm scarf. Take these with you, she said softly. They'll help keep you steady, at least. For tonight. Ethan accepted them with a nod, visibly moved. I'll never forget this, he said quietly. Lila smiled gently, watching him step into the misty night, a small bundle of hope in his hands. As he walked away, she reflected on how profound the night had been, not because of any grand gestures, but because of the simplicity of human kindness, the courage to reach out and offer warmth, understanding, and safety to someone in need. Back in her car, Lila started the engine, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't realized she needed. Moments like these reminded her why she shared these stories on Kindness Daily's Live, to show that even the smallest acts could touch lives in ways unimaginable. She thought about Ethan, alone but no longer invisible, and about the countless others who might find themselves in similar situations. All it took was someone willing to see, someone willing to care, even for just a moment, to spark change, to plant hope. And with that thought, she knew that the story would inspire others to act, to reach out, and to show compassion, because kindness had a power beyond words, beyond expectation, beyond measure. Tonight had been proof. A stranger in distress had found safety, someone had witnessed their pain, and through a simple act, humanity had shown itself in its most beautiful form. Lila smiled as she drove away, the misty streets reflecting the quiet magic of a night, defined not by sorrow, but by connection, empathy, and the transformative power of kindness.